I've never been out of the country before except for a brief trip to Niagara Falls in Canada when I was 9. There's a certain anxiety that pairs with airport officials, even when traveling domestically. But the disquiet escalates when some guy is playing a literal game of Papers, Please with my life. He asks who I'm here to see. I say my pal Tom, and they ask how I know this man. I tell the truth. I know him from the internet. He's a musician. We exchanged emails online. I like his music. We both like cars. He offered to show me around. The attendant asks if I'm in a relationship with this person, and I laugh and I tell her no. We're just friends, defusing a bomb that isn't live. She asks for my profession, and I tell her I'm a writer, and that I'm actually here with the guy who's signing in at the booth next door. She laughs and says we really should have gone to the same booth together. I make mental note for next time, while getting over the cognitive dissonance that there could even possibly be a next time. The lady welcomes me to her fine country, in an accent I would later learn was of Birmingham extraction. On the ride back to Tom's, rain insists upon the windshield, and I discover the extent to which this country is surveilled. Cameras everywhere. The lanes end more abruptly than No Country for Old Men. I don't know how anyone manages these motorways without developing ulcers from the stress of it all. The closer you get to civilization, the less margin for error in your movements, as cars crowd together in a chaos of orderly movement. We arrive at Tom and Kate's, and I'm shown my room. It's cleaner and more cozy than many hotels I've stayed in. My head hits the pillow, and sweet Lady Jetlag makes her introduction. It's 10 a.m. Monday. When I get up to take a leak, it's midnight. I put on the Jim Cornette Experience and go back to sleep. Ric Flair judges a queefing contest between two groupies, and the night drains of color. Stories about Smoky Mountain Wrestling weave their way into my dreams, and I wake up hating Tim Horner. The days blend together, and the weather reminds me of home in the autumn, a briskness and moisture that exists independent of any rain. It's sunny and overcast in equal measure. It's like Pennsylvania, but it doesn't smell like horse manure or mushroom farms half the time. Liberating warmth and unseasonal coolness are brothers sharing a crowded bedroom. It's a layer cake of climate change, a baked Alaska with its own monarch. The next day, Mr. Regular offers that we walk to a cafe. The nearest is a half hour of walking, which is fine by me. I want to see the town. I want to see movement. The cars on the streets. The children in their schoolyards with the teachers in reflective vests, for reasons I'm too famished to comprehend. It's the early morning, and I sample the television before leaving, as if I don't obsessively watch enough British television back home. Dr. Foster, Doctor Who, Broadchurch, The Paradise, Father Brown, Top Gear, Tonight at the London Palladium. I'm a man of exceedingly random taste. I flip through the channels hoping to engage with the absurdity of Eurovision for the first time, but I find myself watching the Jeremy Kyle show. I know it's probably no better than Maury Povich, but trash TV seems less trashy in the Queen's English. Google Maps sets us on our path to the cafe. There's an open mic scheduled for the nearby pub. I consider playing it, but feel like this place would probably expect a higher class of musician. A milk truck sits open on the street, empty bottles waiting to be filled. The town is quiet, but dense with the business of living. We make it to the cafe. A little girl is singing some nonsense song she made up, as her mother orders something hot and complicated. All children are songwriters. I order a sandwich and a pot of peppermint tea. I've never been able to turn a head just by opening my mouth before, and it's too great a responsibility. The barista balks when I mention possibly getting honey with my pot of tea. What unwritten rules am I breaking? What don't I know? What am I doing wrong other than everything? And when will I learn to stop being so dramatic? We sit down with our order numbers at the table. Our waitress is a teenager. She has braces and an eager smile. She's amused to find Americans here, in what she perceives as the middle of scenic nowhere. I wonder if we present as American without opening our mouths. I have observations I want to make to Mr. Regular, but the risk of being overheard in an American accent is too high. The waitress explains to us that she's been to Miami, and I apologize by reflex, although I'm sure Miami can be a lovely place. But it's not here. I'm in love with here. The quiet and the welcome. Every man to himself. His business his own. We explore the town and discover a stunning lack of refuse. Engines sound different here. Perhaps due to the fuel? I don't know. There's more of a low thrum embedded inside a higher-pitched whine. I can't explain it. It sputters and flows like the half-finished work of a plumber. There are no screen doors or screens on the windows, and I guess they're up there with all the other things people don't use anymore, like 1-800-COLLECT and the phrase chillax. Were there ever screen doors to begin with? Or is that just an American thing? After about a half hour of walking, we come across the first bit of graffiti. The phrase "Millionaire Goth Boys" written in black. The paint isn't running, and the writing is legible and literate. I'm impressed even though I have no idea who these people are, or why they've chosen a name that sounds like a late 90s screamo act. But then, everything could be a band name if you try hard enough. I expect that some hipsters will start a band called Portion Control. I don't know what their genre would be, but I imagine it'd be something with the prefix post. The sun rises and sets, but it feels as though everything is happening later. The mornings feel longer, and the evenings are bright with beer and the absent attention of house cats. We're halfway through the first week when we finally start shooting. We rent out an airfield to do our godless business. The shooting days are filled with conversation about the differences we've noticed since arriving here. For one, cigarette packages judge you for smoking. Not that I smoke or care if anyone else does, but I'm met with a diseased lung at every turn, staring me in the face like a tar-colored verdict. I note that the Facebook notification globe apparently changes based on your location on the planet, which I recognized after arriving back at Tom and Kate's on Tuesday. It impressed me far more than it really should have, but again, I'm a simple man and given to easy astonishment. I take down information from Paul, one of the volunteers with the Japanese import we haven't done before. He asks how I've enjoyed my stay so far, and I talk his ear off about the quotidian wonders that impress a guy like me. The architecture, the oblong order of the roadways, the talk radio, the patience of strangers when it comes to a Yank like me. I tell Paul that I expected the Queen to be on some of the money, but not all of it. I hope it doesn't come out as judgmental towards the monarchy, although I'm not entirely sure whether it would even be received negatively or not. I simply don't know, one way or the other. I snap a picture behind the wheel of this import, and I hope Paul doesn't think I'm as big of a tool as I think I'm being, but I can't help it. I left my sense of tourist dignity on the airplane. I prepare to hop in the back of the Abarth we're using as a makeshift camera car, to perform my role as the cameraman for the chase shots. Mr. Regular has already situated himself back there to get a feel for the room. The trunk hatch is open, and it's not as if he can easily get out, and I probably wouldn't have fit anywhere near as comfortably, even with all the seats down. So Mr. Regular opts to stay put, and he's the one filming the sequence as I get more notes from the other 2 volunteers in attendance. Both shooting days are like this. 3 volunteers, 4 hours, sunshine with intermittent bouts of rain. Nothing that requires a heavy umbrella. We go to the same pub after both shoots, a quaint little place that has Guinness, Old Speckled Hen, and Stella on tap, and nothing else. I have a fistful of foreign currency and a stomach yearning to swell with hearty meats and heavy ales. I'm met with a judgmental eye from a man who looks like a 31-year-old StarCraft enthusiast that still uses leet speak. There are rules, and no one is telling me I'm breaking them. They expect me just to know, as any good and decent person would. I'm not as talkative at dinner as I would like, and I don't know why. A certain fogginess is setting in with the beef and ale pie. I become introverted. It's not that I don't like people, it's just that I have a boner for solitude. I go to take out some money for another round, but the ATM is busted, robbed of its purpose, like a girl who's prepared to be mad at her boyfriend for the next week over some slight. But then he apologizes. Now that anger has nowhere to go, and it becomes waste like so much dead skin. I consider moving to Essex to open a pub called the Heir Presumptive. I lose track of the days. I Skype with my family. We're a close family, and I miss them as much as any man can miss nephews and siblings, mother, grandmother, and niece. The routine of everything you left behind. I recognize I'm going to feel a similar longing for this place once I'm back home. I feel it now. Every day a different pub, with different, welcoming faces, and beautiful buildings of rustic quality, on roadways devoid of the aggression and impatience of southeastern Pennsylvania. Tom and Kate take us to a chip shop, and we shoot a quick video of our experience. I'm convinced fish and chips is the apex of what we can accomplish as a species. How the cod stays so flaky is beyond me. We regularly mess this up back home. Hours later, the British food runs riot on my body. I find the nearest bathroom to have it out with the porcelain decider. The The weekend arrives. The bank has frozen my card. I explained to them before leaving that I would be here, but someone didn't get the memo. Luckily, I took out enough money to last the trip, but I don't like the feeling of being divorced from my finances. So Tom drives me to the bank. He's genuinely one of the nicest, most down-to-earth people I've ever had the privilege of knowing. I tell him about how I've struggled with anxiety since I was a kid, and how it's kind of insane that I'm even here at all. He tells me the story of his proposal to his fiancée, a woman who's wonderful in her own right, and whose warmth and patience helped put me at ease about all the faux pas I thought I was making in that first week. Tom tells me about going toe-to-toe with a vindictive music journalist over a spitefully written article that had nothing to do with his band's music. My admiration for Tom grows, and I'd like to think I'd be able to stand firm like that myself, but I let most of the lousy things written about me go unanswered. After all, what's the point of engaging, you know? It seems unfair to all the people who write lovely things that go unanswered. Why should only the jerks get a reply? Why should the negative comments have more weight than the positive ones that outnumber them? And what would I even say anyway? Only the work can change a person's mind. So I clutch my notebook in the passenger seat, hoping the Iacocca documentary will turn out well. Government-funded radio rehashes debatable talking points. There's respectful back and forth, with none of the overlapping, antagonistic rabble of political talk shows back home. There are radio dramas about mundane things, like an uncle teaching his Ed Sheeran-obsessed niece how to drive. They call it The Archers. It's low-stakes drama, but I ask Tom to turn up the volume anyway. I keep expecting something awful to happen to the uncle and his niece, but the sword of Damocles never falls. It's life. It's engagingly mundane. Virtually nothing happens. If this were a movie, it'd probably win all the Oscars. Back at the house, I work on the Iacocca documentary while Tom, Kate, and Mr. Regular watch Ex Machina. I've seen it already, but I end up getting sucked in again anyway. Progress stalls. The next night, after filming some point-of-view videos, I get roped into a reality dating show Tom and Kate are watching. It's set in a hotel, and nobody seems particularly well-matched, although Tom assures me this show has led to marriages and children. By the end of the first episode, I'm desperate for more. From a sociological level, it's fascinating. Watching first dates on Channel 4 is like watching a BBC documentary on the mating habits of the serial monogamist. The weekend arrives without my realizing it. Mr. Regular announces an RCR Car Meet after we spend Saturday scouting locations. We find a quaint park that will work for keeping things inconspicuous. He announces the meet only on Twitter in order to keep attendance to a manageable level. We're lucky to find that we're not the only ones occupying this place. Nobody pays us any mind because there's a swap meet already going on, in addition to some other random enterprise that involves a marching band and people dressed as Spartan soldiers. Some of the fans in attendance are annoyed that England is doing exactly what Americans would expect England to do. They don't know that this isn't a bad thing to me. The UK has always been a bucket list location for me, and people would always look at me strangely when I'd tell them so. I'm not even entirely sure how to explain it, but I have some weird kind of nostalgia for this place I've never been. Like I'm remembering some half-lived life I never got to finish. Maybe it'll change as time goes on, but for now, Coventry is a delight. Fans bear all manner of charming gifts, from a mini pork pie to a personalized keychain made to resemble our Moto Loot merch. Harry is one of the first guys I meet, and I'm instantly put at ease by how relaxed everyone is. Not that I expected anyone would be nervous. I mean, who am I anyway? I'm just some guy who's out of his depth in a place he's never been. But I feel less like these people are strangers, and more like they're distant college acquaintances I haven't seen in a while. And this is a good thing, especially when you're a guy prone to anxiety. Mandy Poby invites us to dinner with her beautiful family, and I take down her number with the hopes I'll be able to use it, especially since she offered to take us to Buckingham Palace. But part of me knows our schedule won't align. I wish I could tell her how much that offer meant to me now. Rich shows me how to crease a 20-pound note to make the Queen smile and frown, and this is endlessly amusing to me.
So yeah, he's just basically folded it so you've got a fold on both eyes and then another fold on the nose, and then you can make her really happy. And then you can make her really angry.
Perry plays American football, and we chat about that for a bit before returning our attention to his car. His enthusiasm for cars is infectious, and it's something I generally find really endearing about the UK. Maybe not every man is driving his dream car, but everyone has this intrinsic respect for what they're driving, at the very least. And best case scenario, you get guys who are just as anxious to tell you about their car as you are to hear about them. It's kind of interesting that I had these sorts of conversations with just about everyone there. Guys like Gaz, who was really polite about asking Mr. Regular and myself to sign his sun visor. Or Violet, who showed off some vintage Land Rovers that I would have desperately loved to have taken on the road. I mean, good lord, they were so beautifully lived in. Like a Millennium Falcon, but terrestrial. I keep hoping I'm not disappointing anybody. It's not that I don't like people. It's just that I have a boner for solitude. People like Violet and Perry and Harry and Mandy Poby were so cool to talk to, even if only briefly. We gather around a Suzuki Cappuccino, which is about 3/4 the size of an MX-5. I've never seen one before, much less up close like this, but I want one, mostly because I have nothing exotic enough to show off at a Cars and Coffee. A young fan with a camera around his neck snaps a photo as I turn to meet his gaze. It was purely an accident of timing, but I hope he doesn't think I mind him taking pictures of me. We're all here to record moments for posterity. All manner of makes and models are represented here, and the weather manages to hold for the most part. I'm amazed at how well everyone is getting along. No crazy antics, no arguments about this or that being superior to something else. I wonder if any friendships are being formed out of this meet. I wonder if any of these people will keep in touch. I don't think anything would delight me more than to bring people together in the name of a silly YouTube show. I wonder if that feeling of surrealness will ever subside. I wonder how actual famous people do it. I wonder if people listening will think, man, we need to get these guys laid. And I wonder how often I'll use the phrase, I wonder, in this diary. Matt snaps a photo of the entire gang at the meet. At least those still around by the end of it. I feel bad that Matt doesn't get to be in it. Maybe he knows someone good with Photoshop who can sneak him in. Or maybe it only matters to him that he was there. A guy named Nick politely asks if he can grab a photo. Jack's girlfriend Jessie takes a picture of me squatting and doing the vape niche pose. I can't believe the weather held as nicely as it has. I keep expecting there to be some catch to all this. I like these people. I like this place. My boner for solitude is going flaccid. We shoot some more point-of-view videos over the next week, including a bit with a Rolls-Royce Wraith and a Citroën 2CV. I figure 6 cars is too brief a season for the UK, so I asked Mr. Regular if we can turn the 2CV into a full review, only shot guerrilla style with just GoPros. I have more footage than either of us would realistically need anyway, so might as well put it to use. The 2CV is a delightful little thing, albeit so loud while driving that you have to shout to be heard, despite being packed in more tightly than a Bonnaroo Blunt. The Rolls-Royce Wraith is more spacious and a much smoother ride, although you could argue the 2CV has more character to her. I suppose it's all about perception and what each person brings to the car. The point-of-view drives go by fast, and we find ourselves with free time, visiting Shakespeare's house and standing in crowded plazas where tourists seek sanitized authenticity. Because tourists want the real thing, but they want it romanticized. There's something to be said for shameless tourism, but I'm not entirely sure there's any other way to really enjoy yourself in a new place. My pride is about the size of a cashew anyway, so I left that shit on the plane because it'd just get in the way, come London. Naturally, Tom was nice enough to offer to drive us to London without either of us ever mentioning word one about the place. Of course, I had been desperate to ask about going to London since landing in Manchester, like I had blue balls and London was the only place I could nut. We were on the road close to 3 hours, not because it was a 3-hour journey, but because traffic was its own nightmare. But hey, we still got to see all the sights. 10 Downing Street, Big Ben, the Houses of Parliament, Westminster Abbey, the Abraham Lincoln statue out in front, or the giant elongated thumb nearby. There were dueling protests, or perhaps they were in tandem. I can't pretend to know the machinery of public discourse in a foreign land. Piccadilly Circus teemed with life, and featured the first streets that looked anything like home, with its homeless denizens with passive signs asking for consideration. The world a vast and speculative system, deep with empathy but short on pocket change. A man in a three-piece business suit casually walks past a gruff-looking vagrant in search of change. The man's dog sits atop a throne of rolled-up sleeping bags, a faraway gaze in his eyes. In my tireless cynicism, I wonder if the dog is part of the grift. I hate being cynical. It feels like part of a genetic condition people would rather not talk about, like a bad heart or a small dick. I feel like I'm annoying everyone with my endless photo snapping, but I can't help it. This is just who I am. I want to see everything. I want to capture everything, to seize and store it for posterity in case the opportunity never comes again, to relive it in miniature, to reminisce, to place it somewhere for others to know how far I've come, not just geographically, but psychologically as well. There's an ocean between me and my home, where the memory of struggling to go anywhere at all wasn't so distant, when the crush of anxiety wasn't so much a stranger as a coworker, creeping into the break room and swiping the clearly labeled bag of self-reliance. We arrive at the Camden markets. It's the kind of place Dickens might have written about if he were around today, a place equal parts transient and perpetual as the concept of commerce itself. I snap a photo of a mannequin that looks like my friend John from back home. The shopkeep doesn't want me taking photos, and I can't blame him. He's probably used to people like me. So I move along and end up in a hat shop. Nothing fits because my head is uncharacteristically huge, not from ego, but from biology. It's a trait of my family, to be cut out of our mother, and to have our heads weighed to make sure death wasn't in our immediate future. We go to an auto museum sometime later. I should have done a better job keeping track of the days, but I'm careless and drowning in allergies. As we wander through the museum, I wonder what it would be like to live in an age of wood-framed cars and picket lines. I rediscover my love for the MG. Any MG. I'd like to reiterate that I'm an exceedingly simple man. I want an MG more than I want to play Survivor. I want an MG more than a time machine that allows me to relive my greatest hits, because those days are gone. But I can forge new paths. I could still live something fresh on the open road in an MG. Forget who I am. Forget what I'm supposed to be doing. But also remember that, yeah, I'm the Roman. And to a lot of people, at least more than I ever thought there would be in 100 million years, that means something. I have friends in 2 countries. People who kinda, sorta, somewhat respect me in 2 countries. People who shook my hand because they wanted to. Bought me a pint because I made them laugh. Made them think, made them forget. And I didn't do that alone. I never could have. Mr. Regular is the Shawn Michaels, and I'm the Marty Jannetty, and that's fine by me. I'm still a part of something that had meaning to someone. I can't pretend to be an important person, or even a well-liked person, but I really didn't know work could be rewarding before this. I slept on the plane ride home, remembering the goodbyes, remembering Kate telling us we were always welcome, remembering Tom shaking my hand, and bringing it in, and thinking to myself, this is my friend, and not, this is a man with his own Wikipedia page. Remembering Kate giving one last farewell. Goodbye, Nick. And a hug. Not everyone in the world gets to feel welcome, feel safe, feel assured in the places they go or the choices they make. And it's mostly because life is weighed on a risk-reward scale where life doesn't exactly reward high-risk behavior. There really is no reason this UK trip should have gone as well as it did but for Tom and Kate, and for the wonderful volunteers who offered their cars, their gear, and their time. For the fans who came to see us, and to see the cars in attendance. I feel lucky in this regard. I feel lucky in every regard. I really wish I knew how to express what this trip meant, but I know no other way but to say thank you. Goodbye, UK. I miss you already, and I hope to see you again someday.